All right. Thank you guys for kicking us off this morning. It is a bright light. It is a bright light. Yeah. Quick introductions. Tell the people who you are. Sure.
Hello. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Dan Vincent. I work at Media Hub. I've been on the agency buying side for roughly, my lord, 20 years at this point. And currently I'm working with brands such as the NBA, Paramount, Hasbro, Scott's Miracle Grow, and Remy Cointreau.
Hi, everybody. Nick Giorgio with Simply Safe Home Security. I've been there for almost 9 years on the brand side. Before that was at a small direct response TV agency. And work on channels across the funnel.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm at Goodby, Silverstein and Partners. I'm in comms planning, creative consulting, and I do some media buying too. I work across BMW, Kawasaki, and Mountain Dew right now. And before Goodby, I was at UM.
Okay, so all of you guys have been touched or worked on a Super Bowl advertising campaign at some point. I think the most recent stat was an ad cost $8 million this past year. Rapid fire, is a Super Bowl ad spot worth it?
Yes, it certainly can be.
You didn't understand the word rapid fire, did you?
Yes.
Nick?
That was going to be my answer. I was going to say it depends. But I'll also say yes.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, we got a room full of yeses in here. So how do you justify the investment?
I'll start. I think Super Bowl is that one time where it's like the one big collective viewing moment that we still have. I think a lot of times people are just watching shows on their own now. It's not all happening at the same time. So it's like one of the only events that, everyone's watching the same thing at the same time, talking about like cultural movement, like Carrie was saying. It's a huge cultural event that you can really have cultural movement from. I think it's also the only time that people are watching the ads before, during, and after and talking about them. And there's like every coworker conversation on the Monday after is like, oh, I was just watching for the ads or whatever, which never happens with other things like your daughter trying to skip. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. It's essentially a holiday in this country, which and to Charlotte's point, it is something that is eventized throughout an entire day, and really blends the line between sports, entertainment, and culture, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's unique, right? It's the only event with that much live viewership all at one time. I think you have to be aligned internally on what the goals are. If you're looking for short-term efficiency, it might not be the right play. But if you're looking to build a brand long-term and build awareness and consideration and trust, and you're going to execute it the right way across channels, then absolutely, I agree.
So there were some it depends or it can be worth the investment. So what else would you rather spend your money on other than the Super Bowl spot?
I mean, a lot of the advertisers that we work with at Media Hub, I think taking advantage of some of the lead up playoff games at somewhat of a fraction of the cost could be pretty impactful. Also taking advantage of the NFL year round, could be something that's very impactful for brands as well. And I've also seen alternative strategies of maybe targeting viewers who don't watch the Super Bowl. As much as we've talked about how big of a day it is for a lot of viewers here in the US, there's also a good amount of people who have no interest in it whatsoever. So there's a real strategy of targeting that subset of an audience as well.
Yeah, I think you can reach the NFL viewing audience outside of the Super Bowl on linear, on connected TV, in the podcast space. Sports is a huge genre there. So you can reach that audience efficiently. But for building a brand, again, I think the Super Bowl is a unique opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm a big Super Bowl fan, especially for brand building. But I think, yeah, winning like the second screen and those conversations that are happening around it too is a great opportunity.
Is there a particular time slot that you like? How much does effectiveness is predicated by the placement of where it is aired?
My favorite spot, I think, is the spot right before halftime. I think a lot of people join in and just watch just the halftime show, so you catch that. I think a lot of times people are really excited to see that and are watching more at the beginning of the game. And there's so much anticipation. I think some people say like right after the halftime show, but maybe the halftime show flops and people are like leaving during. So yeah, I like right before that show.
I'm more of a Super Bowl traditionalist. I think first quarter, second quarter, first half is really the time frame that I mean, at the end of the day, you don't really have a choice at times, given given the deals you have in place. If you do, that would be my recommendation from a buying standpoint. I think that is still the time of the game where those who tune in to actually view the ads are still really at their highest engagement levels of looking forward to seeing what's coming. I do think viewership spikes very close to halftime, coming in and out of halftime. We've worked with partners like EDO in the past who measure search engagement, and I think we've still consistently seen higher spikes in the first quarter compared to closer to halftime.
The safe play is first half, before the game's a blowout, before viewership can drop off. I think it depends on the game. If it goes to overtime, maybe viewership will spike back up. I think it's important to make sure you have some distance from competitors too if they're in the game. So not just pod placement, but also where you sit in comparison to the competitors.
Charlotte, you brought up second screen, right? So how do we stay culturally relevant and part of the conversation, even if you didn't buy a spot?
I think there's a lot of ways to do that. You could do, a TikTok top view maybe on the game day and be like that first ad on the day. You could work with influencers who are like prepping for Super Bowl parties and things like that and making sure they're talking about your product that way. Yeah, there's like so many ways to activate, I feel like.
I agree. I think also Carrie talked about it, and we're talking about it now about these blended lines between culture and entertainment. And you mentioned it with your jean purchase relative to Kendrick Lamar's performance. And I think another brand, if we can talk about brands who did it really well this year, is United Airlines. If everybody remembers that, just did a simple tweet, took a risk, immediately went viral, and it was everything that people were talking about for a few weeks. And to my knowledge, they had no other skin in the game for the Super Bowl. So sometimes you just have to take a shot with one simple social media post, put it out there and see what happens. Obviously it could go the other way, but without that risk, it never would have happened.
Have you guys seen examples of it having gone the other way? Or I can ask an easier one, right? Not put you on the spot. So if we're trying to amplify what we see on the Super Bowl, like where are some examples of brands who've done it really well, that they've had a spot or they didn't have a spot, and they created it so much more than just that 30-second spot?
I think this year I was really impressed with Coors and all of the Case of the Mondays, all the billboards being misspelled and things. I think people were talking about it so much more before, is like, was that supposed to be misspelled? Was that, a copy editing error or whatever? And I think it just caused so much buzz ahead of the game. So I think teaser stunts are a great way to extend beyond just your buy.
I go back to crypto.com when they had the QR code just floating across the screen, and that's a big risk to basically put very little money behind production and throw a spot up on the screen. And I think they accomplished their goal, and everyone was talking about it the next day. So you can take a big risk in your creative, not just in ancillary channels.
I think we talked about it a little bit as a group, but I think before they had the broadcast rights, Tubi did it really well 2 or 3 years ago by tricking everyone to believing that their TV was broken. So again, something pretty simple in the creative and probably very low cost to Tubi at that time. It was a smart move.
Yeah. Is effectiveness for like a good Super Bowl spot? Is it all about the creative? Like, how much do we impact as the media buyers itself?
I mean, I will let the creative person talk to this more. I do think it is very heavily creative led. There's a lot that you can do from a media buying perspective to try to amplify your presence in and around the Super Bowl, post Super Bowl. But I think ultimately, first and foremost, it comes down to how strong your creative is.
Yeah, I mean, you need to have a good idea for it to be worth it, right? When we're saying, is it worth it? It needs to be the right creative with the right message that people remember. Whenever we're ideating around creative for Super Bowl, we always think about a lot of people are going to be drunk when they're watching this. So, and there's going to be people talking and all these things. You have to capture attention. It has to be super single-minded and memorable. And so, yeah, I think creative is a huge, huge, huge part of it, especially when you're spending as much money as you are on the big game.
That's a great insight.
Let's dive into that one, Charlotte. So you worked on Mountain Dew, which famously had Seal as a seal. Now, when you went into this, did you like, people are going to be drunk, let's give them nightmares as well?
So funny. Yeah, honestly, that meeting I'll never forget when it was first delivered, the Seal as a seal idea. It was absurd. And we went through all the creative ideas. It was round one creative review. And, my one of my coworkers was like, okay, everyone close your eyes and say the spot that you remember that we went through like 30 probably scripts. And they're like, okay, say the one thing that you remember. And everyone was like, seal. Everyone. So we knew like that's how viewers were going to experience it too, that they would like not forget it. So yeah, we kind of wanted some absurdism. I think Mountain Dew is such a fun brand, and we wanted it to be something that people wanted to participate in and share and create their own content around, and we saw that happen. So yeah.
Mountain Dew is a fun brand. It's lighthearted. It's easy, right? There's something inherently easy about having humor tied to that. Nick, with Simply Safe, I wouldn't put security and humor technically in the same brand. So you ran a couple spots. Like, how do you break through on the creative when you can't lean too heavily into the obscure, like seal on a seal?
No, and we talk about this all the time. Do we want to use humor? Do we want to stay more serious? And some of our competitors, most of our competitors, stay on the more serious side of things. I would say my experience with the Super Bowl, we bought a spot in 2019. We haven't bought one since. So internally, it wasn't looked at as a huge success. And I think one of the reasons is we didn't put enough effort into creative. We bought the Super Bowl spot pretty much last minute, I think in end of November, December, and we had been working on creative already for a refresh, and we said, we'll just run our new creative. First time it aired was in the Super Bowl, and we didn't support it across channels. We didn't have any teaser campaign. We just kind of ran the spot, and that was it. And I think that was a poor decision, and we definitely learned that. And so that's why I said at the beginning, you need to execute across channels. You need to have a plan and really think of it across the company, and that takes a lot of work. So anyways, we ran a spot that was all about fear and, talking about AI and how everyone's scared these days about Alexa and all that. And it didn't really break through. So I think it's really important to have a breakthrough creative.
Yet you still say Super Bowl is worth the investment, even though that wasn't successful for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Doritos and all these companies that have these full funnel campaigns, they do a really great job, and it can work for them. And you need to have buy-in that you're not going to get, it's not going to be an efficient cost per visit or cost per brand search for media, but long term it can build your brand, and you're building a brand to drive sales long term. So yeah.
Let's talk about the planning aspect of it. So we all know the Super Bowl is in February. Planning starts in June, or right now for some of us for next year's game, right? So when we plan so far in advance, how do we stay agile when just things come up that we can't predict about these live events?
I think a big part is just being really overly prepared with different templates and different, different brand kits that you can kind of have at the ready for game day when things, you might want to comment on as a brand. I also think that it's good to kind of have, when you're planning, to think about general, modes of communication, but being really open to adapting all of your tactics depending on what the creative idea is. So making sure that there's enough flexibility in your media plans that you can really make impactful tactics that really make sense with the targeting or the creative idea, like extending it. And then, just always being, holding some money aside for some bonus activations maybe that might come up a little bit later in planning.
Yeah, I agree. Keep your wallet open, number one. And then, number two is, yes, to your point, you may purchase the spot in June, July, August, but from there you almost have to break it down into phases of, depending on how far you want to go with the Super Bowl. But there's a lot of opportunities that come up within different phases. You could take advantage of something like the ad blitz on YouTube, which starts as early as January, I believe, and try to ramp up a presence there. Then probably start working on plans for post Super Bowl activations around that time afterwards. So there's, if you take kind of a phased approach to it, I think there's plenty to keep you on your toes and busy leading up to the big game.
Yeah, I think you want to be ready to keep it going after the game too. You want your campaign to stay fresh in people's minds, and you want to keep it on air, not just run it in the Super Bowl and have that be it. One thing we do is the day after Super Bowl, we invest heavily in sports podcasts. So, Bill Simmons, the most downloads he gets typically, unless some like a Luka trade happens, is the day after the Super Bowl. So we make sure we have host reads that day. People see your ad, then they hear your host read, and it builds frequency across channels and helps you be more memorable.
The Super Bowl is the prime example of like live sports or live events happening, but those come up across the year, right? Between other live sporting events, the Oscars, the impending nuptials between Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, right? Like there's going to be a million things that we can advertise during these. So how do we really capitalize on these live moments that happen either during the campaign itself, like during the Super Bowl, or for the rest of the year? Like what makes a good live moment activation?
I think kind of what I mentioned before about taking almost like a simplified social approach and a risk. I think we've seen other brands do it post Super Bowls as well. You mentioned the Oscars, and we talked about it as well. But there was a QSR who had a very smart stunt post Oscars, giving away the orders of a lot of famous celebrities after their big night out. So just thinking creatively and outside the box of, again, how like the ad, the reach that you get from the ad, the awareness, it's awesome. It's very good for the brand as a whole. But again, really capitalizing on those lines where culture comes into play and focusing on, that chatter away from the big screen, I think is becoming even more and more important.
I think with live events too, it's making sure that, whatever your activation is, it's super contextual to that event, and thinking about like, is this a live event that your audience cares about? Or is it just something that sounds flashy?
A really good example of that, I remember I think it was the 2020 election, on CNN, the breaking news alerts, com.com was right at the bottom, which I thought was so perfect. Everyone's a little stressed on election night, and com.com logo is across the screen. So we tried to do that this year with Simply Safe during the election. And I think, thinking about safety in your family during an election is kind of native and organic. So looking for moments that fit in for your brand, for live moments.
Yeah, Nick, I think that's the most understated thing. Everyone is a little stressed during the election.
Yeah.
A little bit. So can a Super Bowl spot drive performance, or is it purely branding?
I think it really depends. When I was talking earlier about making sure that your, creative or campaign is really like single-minded, like you're trying to accomplish one thing you're really focused on. I think for Mountain Dew this year, we hear a lot about awareness. I think for Mountain Dew, we were really trying to drive flavor awareness because people didn't know that Mountain Dew Baja Blast is tropical lime flavored. So Kiss from a Lime was trying to communicate that. And we really honed in on like that one kind of thing that we were trying to move the needle on. And so I think really getting specific on what you're trying to communicate is important. But I would say, yeah, it's probably more branding than lower funnel.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, if the brand already has a great brand position and great brand awareness, and I think by all means take a swing for the fences and try to deploy, more maybe lower funnel tactics. But if you don't have that big brand awareness yet, I mean, that's what you should be using that day for.
Yeah, my experience is it does not perform well for lower funnel KPIs, but absolutely can drive consideration and trust, and that leads to long-term lower funnel performance.
So what, if we think to the future, what trends are y'all seeing with Super Bowl that will kind of come to life over the next couple of years?
I'll take the buying answer here, and that is one. How much bigger can viewership get? I think that's the trend we're going to continue to see, especially as more traditional broadcast networks start bringing along their CTV counterparts with them. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with CTV and the Super Bowl as well. Will they ever, look for ways to split the feeds, sell inventory separately in CTV, maybe open up more lower funnel opportunities with interactive ads within CTV? I think there's a lot of opportunity there for the advertiser and for the media partner as well from a revenue standpoint. So I'd like to see some progression there over the next few years.
Yeah, and it would be cool also if that does happen, with like Tubi this year. I think some brands, their audiences are streaming more and are more cord cutters, so it would make a lot more sense for some brands to buy, just the streaming inventory potentially, kind of like when you're buying, regional for Super Bowl. So yeah, I think that'll be really interesting. And then another trend I think that we were talking about earlier is just like teaser stunts and getting really creative in the lead up for your Super Bowl campaigns around the ads.
One thing I noticed this year was there was so many celebrities in the ads. So I wonder if we've kind of gone too far to the celebrity route, and if that will start to go the other way, and creative will lean away from the celebrities. I mean, Seal was amazing, but I felt like every Tom Brady was in every single ad. So,
well, that's another thing too, is making sure that whatever celebrity you're working with is exclusive to you for the day. I mean, how many Tom Brady commercials were there? But yeah, I think it's that exclusivity too.
I mean, I could watch Tom Brady every day. I'm not.
Me too.
I don't hate it. Last question before I open it up to the crew. We all have a favorite Super Bowl spot, maybe from this year, maybe from years of past. My personal favorite activation was in 2013 in the Superdome when we had the blackout and Oreo tweeted, "You can still dunk in the dark," right? I have goosebumps, like literally thinking about that still. What was your favorite Super Bowl spot ever, and why has it stuck out to you for so long?
I'm going to stay on the animal theme. I think it was 2023, the farmer's dog. Like that spot, still zero celebrity component to it. Just maybe I'm just a soft spot for dogs. I do love dogs. I actually still give my dog kibble, so it didn't really work from a conversion, but I still I know the brand and I see the brand everywhere, and I just remember that heartwarming spot, and it really did stay in my head. So sorry I haven't purchased the product, but
Why have you not purchased the product?
I don't. She's been on a really good diet and has been the same weight since I've had her, so I figure that's good, right?
I love the Clydesdales that are in the Super Bowl every year. I feel like that makes the day feel special. I love the Dunkings commercial from last year. I'm from Boston, so Dunkin' holds a special place in my heart. But yeah, I'd say Dunkings. I mentioned crypto. I thought that was a very impactful ad too.
I think my favorite's probably Everything's a Tide ad. That one's just stuck in my head for years. I also grew up in St. Louis around those Clydesdales at Grant's Farm. So Budweiser commercials always have a special place in my heart too.
Nick, you said you liked the Dunkin' commercials from last year. Do you think that they did a good job of building on the momentum of what they did this year?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what works in the Super Bowl really well is like the Clydesdales. You can build frequency with the same campaign in this one special moment and kind of be known for that. So
Continuity. Questions from the audience? We have one over here. Yeah.
Ryan with Simul Media. For me, it was VW Darth Vader one really stood out, and that was even pre being a parent. And if it ran now, it would probably have different feels. Thank you very much for sharing. And I think Super Bowl is incredible in terms of the convergence of audiences. It's what March Madness for the next 12 days of those games is going to be seen. I'm wondering, both women's and men's tournaments there, is there anything, and obviously the Super Bowl is the creme de la creme, is there anything you've taken from that in terms of audiences, and to steal a terminology from Carrie, is actionable insights that could be actioned outside of the Super Bowl? I'm not perhaps talking about drafting off of the momentum, but anything else that you have learned that have been incredible aha moments for particular brands or agencies and the way you've progressed, of how you can action audiences for future video executions.
for us, we found live sports have some of the best response rates. So some of the highest CPMs, but some of the best response rates. So we know it's the right audience because they're engaged and they respond. So we've taken that learning from NFL and tried to apply it to more efficient live sports like NASCAR, UFC, golf, hockey, places that the CPMs are more reasonable and can drive efficiency.
I think something I've learned from Super Bowl is really making sure that your content is shareable and can be shared. And so we worked with a company called Doing Things Media the past 2 years to create they basically own a bunch of meme pages on Instagram. And we would create like custom memes that we would drop like right after the spot and to like kind of encourage that shareability and UGC. And last year, one of my friends like DM'd me one of the memes and was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so fun." And I was like, "That's an ad." I don't know if you know that, but that made me really happy. I think just like making sure that however you're bringing your campaign to life, that it's really shareable and has cultural impact.
I think specific to March Madness, and from an audience standpoint, being able to capitalize on certain fandoms and teams obviously comes into play, right? One of the clients I mentioned that I work on, like that's a big part of their targeting strategy, especially as you get into like the later half of season. So it's really applicable to March Madness, and what you can do once teams are eliminated. That nature, update, refresh the audiences in real time or as quickly as you can, I think is super important as well.
Hi, Rich Knopke from Nomology. I'm over here.
I don't even know where. Oh, there. I was like, I don't even know where.
It's like it came from.
Where is it coming from?
Hello, this is the voice of God. I'm curious. You spend all this money, obviously, on the big day. You talk about it being more upper funnel, obviously. What does success look like? How do you measure it? Or is it just getting out of the day without like people puking all over your ad?
I think if you would ask my creatives, like what would success be to them, it would be like winning ad meter. But I would kind of disagree. I think it's more about the business results that you're trying to accomplish. Whether that be, favorability or just awareness or product awareness, or, you're entering a new category as a brand or a new product. I think it's just getting really clear on what that business metric is and then accomplishing that, I think, is really true success. But yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've worked with clients who, to Charlotte's point, all they cared about was the position on the ad meter, which is not the direction I would recommend taking in terms of judging how well your Super Bowl campaign performed. I think it's just making sure you have, the correct measurements in place that again is just most applicable to your desired outcomes. There's a lot of measurement solutions out there that can, track things in real time, such as search engagement, as I mentioned before. I'm sure, at the client level, you can tie that back to hopefully sales at some point as well, to see if there was a spike around that time. So, there's ways to keep a tab on those lower funnel metrics, but again, I do think the awareness that the Super Bowl really delivers tops everything else.
Yeah, it's interesting you said search. I think we traditionally think about, like people looking up your brand or commercial or something on Google, but we're seeing kind of TikTok as a really great place to look for search as well, especially with younger audiences. So yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, Charlotte, Nick, Dan, thank you guys so much for
Thank
a
you.
fantastic
Thank you.
Thanks.